Let's begin with the breaking updates now coming in. The U.S. Central Command has launched a series of military strikes against the Iranian targets in response to what it says were Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Reports suggest the strikes were intended to impose heavy costs on Iran for targeting civilian crude commercial shipping in international waters, with Washington describing the attacks as an unjustified act of aggression and a violation of a recent ceasefire. So yet again, tensions in the region with U.S. launching strikes. And here is a confirmation that has come in. This is from the U.S. Central Command that has taken to social media to say the U.S. Central Command forces have begun launching a series of powerful strikes against Iran to impose heavy costs for the targeting and attacking of commercial shipping crewed by innocent civilians in an international waterway. The U.S. strikes are in response to the Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire. This is a statement from the United States that U.S. has launched these strikes, going on to say that it is because Iran had attacked 3 commercial vessels. Now remember, Qatar has also issued a warning to Iran. U.S. has launched a series of powerful strikes and has also threatened to escalate tensions even more because U.S. says that it was Iran that attacked 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there are multiple questions that emerge from this. What happens next? Does it mean that any movement of commercial vehicles is going to be under threat currently? Because as of now, 3 commercial vessels have been targeted already and U.S. has launched strikes on Iran. The larger question on what happens to the peace deal, that question still remains. Does this mean that after the violation of the ceasefire, we're going to see an end of the peace deal? And what does it mean for the world? Are we going to yet again see the markets tumbling, the oil prices soaring after the latest incident? In 24 hours, there have been as many as 3 attacks that have taken place on the commercial vessels, which U.S. has described as strikes on commercial shipping crewed by innocent civilians in an international waterway. So this is how the U.S. has framed it, and the U.S. says that it is Iran that violated the ceasefire, after which it is launching these attacks. In fact, U.S. has also gone on to say that it is also going to be escalating these attacks. What next? That's the question. Are there going to be talks between U.S. and Iran? Let's get you more breaking updates now coming in. Now, Iran has sharply criticized the United States after Washington reimposed sanctions on Iranian oil exports, accusing it of violating the recently signed peace memorandum of understanding. Now, what Tehran says is that the sanctions reversal reflects ill intent and bad faith, and claimed that the U.S. has failed to honor its commitments under the agreement, alleging repeated breaches of the memorandum. So you heard what the United States has said. It went on to blame Iran entirely, but there is a response that has come in from Iran, and Iran has criticized the U.S. after it reimposed the sanctions on Iranian oil. So as of now, U.S. has reimposed sanctions on the Iranian oil exports because U.S. says that the recently signed peace MoU has been violated by Iran. So we have a response that is coming from Iran on this. This is after U.S., remember, put the blame entirely on Iran. Now Iran has also responded to this, going on to say that it was actually a violation from the U.S. side, going on to say that it is the United States that has indulged in this violation. So now with U.S. putting the sanctions back on the Iranian oil exports, the question again comes back to this. Does this mean that the memorandum of understanding that was reached after weeks of negotiations, does it mean that now it has been thrown out of the window? Or is the memorandum of understanding or the peace deal still in existence? That question still remains because we don't know what next. As of now, there is an attack and counter-attack. That's a claim that has been made, that Iran attacked the commercial vessels, after which there has been a response from U.S. Let's get you more breaking updates now coming in. The United States has in fact revoked the general license that authorized the sale of Iranian oil, citing Tehran's alleged actions in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's the latest action that has come in from the United States. It has revoked the Iran oil sanctions waiver. So strikes have resumed as well. The Trump administration revoking with immediate effect the oil sanctions waiver that allowed the purchase of Iranian energy without attracting U.S. sanctions. This is after the fresh American military strikes on Iran over attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, and weeks after both the countries had agreed to a memorandum of understanding. Now, the U.S. Treasury has announced a decision on the same day that the U.S. military resumed strikes on Iran, saying the action was intended to punish Tehran. This is the latest update coming in. Now, there are multiple questions that emerge. My colleague Akanksha Swaroop, news editor, Foreign Affairs, joins us on the broadcast with the details of what this actually means for the world. Akanksha, yet again, we're seeing tensions in the region. Does this mean that the peace deal is going to be completely derailed?
Right. So the U.S. president just yesterday had made a very controversial statement, nothing new to him, but he's gone on to say that we will either ensure that the deal is done or I will finish the job. I don't think that it is difficult to finish the job, but I don't want to put the lives of millions of people of Iran to danger. That is what the U.S. president said as he has been attending the NATO summit, as we all know. But Pratibha, more importantly, you rightly highlighted that, yes, this has now again derailed the peace efforts. As far as the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Zarif Abadi is concerned, he's already said that the U.S. Revoking that waiver on their sanctioned oil. Iran, remember, had been allowed to sell oil after the June 17 MoU that had been struck, is in fact in violation of that MoU. And this, remember, has been a tit-for-tat reaction after the three oil tankers, one belonging to Qatar and two belonging to Saudi Arabia, were attacked by Iranian authorities, as has been claimed in Iranian media reports. Now, in a tit-for-tat action to that, we've been hearing a series of explosions in Iran's Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island and Sirik as well. The timing of these attacks is very fragile, which is why these disturbances are alarming, because remember, there are scores of dignitaries and journalists from around the world, including Indian journalists, who have descended upon Iran. Currently, the funeral procession has reached Najaf in Iraq, and scores of Iraqis from central and southern Iraq have in fact descended upon Najaf. We are being told that the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, after attending the initial mourning ceremony, has had to rush back to Iran to address the security situation there. In fact, India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, is very much in West Asia. He just yesterday concluded his meeting at Bahrain, and before that he was in a direct engagement with the Qatari Prime Minister, who's also the Foreign Minister. So the situation is extremely alarming. We do not know if it's going to also feature during the ongoing NATO summit, which is more to do with defense spending and also to do with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. We can expect reactions coming in from the NATO. So let's see how this impact actually goes forward, Pratibha.
Okay, all right. So the next few hours are going to be very, very important, not just for US and Iran, for every country in the world. In fact, we have Sierra Claire, foreign policy analyst, also on the broadcast with us. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Claire. Looking at the developments, would you say that we're looking at a situation returning to the peak of the war, because there is a very clear escalation, and as of now, no signs of de-escalation from either side?
Right. Well, this U.S. Retaliatory strike responding to Iran's attacks, unprovoked attacks on the Strait of Hormuz, is the largest yet of all the strikes that the U.S. has done since Iran, since the MoU has come into effect, and then there's been trading strikes throughout these past couple of weeks. So this is the largest strike. So I think the message is very clear from President Trump. He even said yesterday that we will either make a deal with Iran or, we can end their whole military capability in an afternoon. And now we're seeing the largest U.S. strike yet. So I think the message is very clear. President Trump is running out of patience, and we do have the ability to hit Iran very hard.
Okay, all right. I request you to stay with us. Any response from U.S. and Iran is going to be very, very significant. And we have, in fact, a statement that has come in from Iran. Let's put out the official statement. This is the first response that has come in from Iran on the latest escalation. So here is what they have said. A statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic strongly condemns the decision by the United States Department of Treasury to revoke the temporary suspension of sanctions on Iran's oil exports. So they start off by the sanctions that have been reimposed, not talking about the alleged attack on the commercial vessels or the response from the United States. So they say that the response of the United States in revoking this is being condemned here in this statement, going on to say the ministry holds the United States government fully responsible for the consequences arising from the breach of commitment. Less than 20 days after the signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, the announcement revoking the general license issued on the 3rd of July constitutes yet another unmistakable indication of ill intent, inconsistency and unreliability of the U.S. governing authorities. This comes despite the fact that over the past 20 days, the United States, either directly or through actions of the Zionist regime against Lebanon, has repeatedly committed both minor and major violations. So the Iran government's response very clearly is pinning the blame entirely on the United States. We have more political reactions coming in. In fact, the countries in the region are also responding. And in the latest statement that has come in, after Iran sharply criticized the United States and the United States revoked the sanctions, Saudi Arabia and Qatar have strongly condemned the attacks on the commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, blaming Iran for the actions they say threaten regional stability and global energy security. So Riyadh warned that the tanker attacks pose a serious risk to international energy supplies, while Doha said the incidents jeopardize the recently signed U.S. Iran peace MoU. So this is very clearly a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding, the deal that was signed between the United States as well as Iran. And Saudi Arabia and Qatar have also strongly condemned these attacks, going on to say that this is going to have an impact not just on regional stability, but also global energy security. What next? That's the question. Are the talks between US and Iran going to be resumed? Is there going to be a de-escalation? Those questions still remain. Iran has completely blamed the United States. Akanksha, we just put out the statement from Iran. It has made no mention whatsoever of any attack on the commercial vessels or even the airstrikes launched by the United States, only going on to speak about the sanctions and saying that this is a clear violation, putting the blame entirely on the United States.
Right. And it's only so far that the reports are indicating that there were attacks on these three LNG vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz, in fact, rather the Strait of Oman, because remember, according to the Iranian media reports, we are being told that the Omanian, that the Qatari ship was in fact transiting through the Strait of Oman, something that the Iranians are completely against. They want that it should, all the transits of the oil vessels should be taking place only through the Strait of Hormuz and not from the backside of the Strait of Oman, which is when the IRGC begins to attack vessels. They say it's in violation of the current maritime laws that they are trying to set up. And yes, we are awaiting a formal confirmation with regards to whether or not it was the Iranians which targeted these vessels. But you're right, the deputy foreign minister in Iran has in fact called the U.S. Attacks on these three islands, Bandar Abbas, Kesher, Mansirik, as a violation of the MoU that had been struck. In fact, Article 1 and 2 has been referred to by Gharibabadi, who is the deputy foreign minister of Iran. And apart from that, they've also said that the U.S. revoking the waiver on sanctions is also a violation of the MoU. This is with regards to oil being sold by Iran. Now, we'll have to see what exactly led to the cause of this, and there has to be a formal Iranian announcement coming in with regards to whether or not it was their authorities, the IRGC, that attacked these three vessels, two of them, of course, belonging to Saudi Arabia and one belonging to Qatar. But the situation is back on tenterhooks. India will also be looking towards securing a safe passage for its own vessels. It already is, in fact, in what reports are indicating. But as I said, the timing of the tit-for-tat attacks has been extremely critical, given that we are already seeing the funeral proceedings of the late Ayatollah currently on right now. They have reached Najaf. The global body is, of course, going to be intervening because, remember, Pakistan has also been very actively involved. They were also very much part of the funeral proceedings. But right now, the U.S. president is engaging with his NATO allies. Let's see if at least Turkey can play a role right now.
Okay, all right. Akanksha, do stay with us. In fact, we have a statement that has come in from Saudi Arabia as well. Like we mentioned, the commercial vessels have been targeted. So these countries have also condemned the action of Iran. Here is a statement from Saudi Arabia. The foreign ministry expresses the strongest condemnation of the Islamic Republic of Iran's targeting of the Saudi tanker while the tanker was passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and the targeting of the Qatari tanker. The kingdom affirms that these rejected attacks are an assault on the security and safety of international navigation and on the security of global energy supplies. Now, that's the statement coming in from Saudi Arabia. Qatar has also, of course, made a statement strongly condemning the attacks on the commercial tankers. And Ms. Claire, there are a few questions that emerge. One, and the biggest question, is if it is going to derail the peace deal entirely. The second question being, does this mean that any movement of any of the vessels from the Strait of Hormuz is now currently under threat? And thirdly, now with sanctions imposed, what does it mean for the countries that have already purchased oil? What happens? Because U.S. has brought back the sanctions with immediate effect.
Well, to your question, the sanctions that are in immediate effect, I think what we've seen in the past, what we've seen the U.S. do is say that any purchase that was already in transit, that was already on the ocean, that they're not going to mess with that. So I would assume that they're going to do the same thing now. But really the only people that were buying Iranian oil were China mostly. So, I don't think there's going to be too much issue in terms of figuring out how to apply the sanctions going forward. And then, in terms of the safety of the ships, absolutely. I mean, clearly there's a danger. The U.S. Navy has been there in the Strait defending commercial shipping basically this entire time. And Iran is threatening commercial shipping. So I think there is an active threat, and there has been an active threat. And, the average Americans are actually getting pretty tired of defending the Strait of Hormuz because we don't use it. And, a lot of people are aware that we don't use it. Our oil comes a lot more from this side of the world. So it's Europe and it's other countries that are actually using the Strait, and yet it's the U.S. that's defending the Strait. So I really hope that can be addressed as President Trump is talking to the NATO allies this week.
Okay, all right. There is a lot of movement of the oil tankers from the Strait of Hormuz, and not just the U.S. There are countries around the world that are affected by this. Let's see how this plays out. I'm thanking our guest, Akanksha, for joining us on the broadcast and getting us all those details. It's a developing situation. We continue getting you the updates. Shortly, we're also expecting an official statement to come in from the United States.